What is up, Rad Potential YouTube? Welcome to today's video. This is going to be a very formidable step in the right direction for the RADX7. We are going to get this thing fired up, and albeit you're looking at this right now, it looks the exact same as it looked in the last video when we put the exhaust on it. However, a ton more work has been done. So the past couple days after we got back from the Epic track day in the RX8, you should go check out that video. I've got my positive and negative battery cables ran, the starter is in and hooked up, my ground straps are in and hooked up, alternator's hooked up, I've got to hook up the ignition coils, we've got to check the fuel system for leaks and plug in a couple sensors on the upper intake manifold, so the TPS and the intake air temperature sensor, which we'll just plug that into the old one and let it sit in here. The fuel system is ready to be checked for leaks, aside from jumpering a few wires back here. So I've ran the wires, which is this loom right here, to the fuel pump power. So this is some bigger gauge wire, the main power for the fuel pump. That's going to go up through the floor, into the trunk, relays and stuff, activate our intake fuel pump. I've also finished up installing the fuel lines, the return and the feed line. Everything is buttoned up from the front to the back for the fuel system, including the filler neck has been installed. It's not screwed down yet, but it's at least in there. So we're fixing to dump some fuel in this thing, and then the next step is oil system. All the oil cooler lines have been fabricated. I need to go through and tighten all of them down, including the turbo drain fitting. I need to just tighten the turbo cold side housing down, the compressor housing, just need to tighten that down. I've been having it loose so I can mess with intercooler piping, but just so it doesn't hit anything when we start this deal, we need to get this thing primed up with oil pressure. So probably gonna have to put the battery charger on it and grab another battery, because that little tiny four-wheeler size high output lithium deal isn't really gonna crank this thing that long while we're trying to first start it. Now, the reason we're starting this thing and then immediately taking it back apart, you're going to be like, holy cow, in the next video when you see all this ripped out and this whole engine bay stripped down to metal, is because I need to make sure that this engine runs. We've got 6 weeks to Deals Gap, Rotary Rally out in North Carolina, and I want to test run this engine right now while the car's kind of in its, decent state. Make sure my oil lines aren't going to leak. Make sure that if I need to resort or order a different fitting for something's rubbing somewhere, that I have time to do that before, in 10 days the engine bay gets painted, 11 days a lot of the stuff starts to go back together. That gives me that amount of time, plus the time after, to sort this. In addition, which you'll see this in another video, but I'll tease you with it here, the fuel tech and all the new wiring stuff for the engine management system has arrived. And then tomorrow, which you won't see in this video, my new wheels are coming, and I am so stoked. Alright guys, the moment has come where this thing does not run. So I got my little cup set up here, catching oil out of the front of the engine, which if you see why that's there, you kind of know what's going on. I've been cranking and cranking and cranking on this thing. Charles has already went home. It's super late. And here, I'll even prove to you, it cranks. But I got no oil pressure. So for some reason, oil should be coming out of here. It's not. I pulled the rear one off of the rear iron. Oil's not coming out of there. Ignore that. And we got problems. So I drained the oil out, and looking in the turbo drain fitting, I stuck a dipstick in there to make sure I put the oil pickup tube on. It's on. I know I put the oil pedestal pickup O-ring in between the front cover and the front iron. I know that's on. But for some reason, I still don't have oil pressure. I got everything else sealed up, so it's not like it's sucking air. I did put oil in it. And it's just, I don't know. I have no idea. So this is why we did the test run. So what you're going to see right now is I'm taking this whole thing back apart because I can't fix any of my oil pressure issues with the engine in the car. And this car has to get stripped to get the bay painted. So let's get the engine out, find out what's wrong and why we're not making oil pressure. Well, it's got an oil pickup tube, an oil pressure regulator, a front oil pressure regulator, and an oil pump. As you saw, I put a drill on the oil pump. If you've ever built like a small block Chevy, something like that, I'm going to use a small block Chevy. If you ever built a small block Chevy, you would stick a oil pump like priming shaft down the distributor drive, because the oil pump drives the distributor. So if you drive the distributor, you can turn the oil pump. Anyways, that's how you prime the oil system in a small block Chevy, because you can spin the oil pump faster than the small block Chevy will crank over and build oil pressure, if that makes sense, right? So I think what I was running into here is I've got a high torque RX7 starter on this thing, so it cranks really fast, or faster than a first gen starter. I don't know if it just had air in the oil pump that wasn't coming out, or what, but as you saw when I floored it on the drill, I was able to suck oil up, and then now, whenever I just barely turn this, it's got oil coming out of it. So effectively I primed this oil pump, and now we're getting oil pressure out of the engine. So what I'm going to start doing, I think, from now on, this is a great learning lesson for me and for you guys. Whenever I put these engines together, before I put this keyway on and put the front cover together, I'm going to take a little cup like this, hold it up over the pickup tube, prime this oil pump so that there's oil inside the pump with my drill. I have to leave the keyway off, like I said, so it can spin on here. You can't really, I don't like taking these nuts off, but regardless, we'll prime the oil system until we get oil coming out of this. Then we'll put the front cover on and the oil pan on, so that way we know that these are ready to go. So we don't run into the issue of our starter doesn't have enough horsepower to crank this over, because I really didn't want to let this engine hit to spin fast enough, because the oil filter, the oil cooler, all the oil lines are so much longer than stock, and they have no oil in them. So these bearings, even though it might take 6 seconds or less, right, once this hits pressure to pump oil through the engine, it has to fill my cooler, fill my oil filter, and then go through the engine, and I just didn't want to hurt the engine, so we pulled it back apart. And I had to come back out anyways for what you're going to see next, which is stripping and welding shut the engine bay, which will be in the next video, but you'll probably see most of it come apart shortly after this. So it's a great lesson, guys. I was a little bit worried that this oil pump had failed or something weird was going on, but I guess really it's functioning properly. You can see right there me slowly turning that, and it's already pushing oil. So I'm just going to pull all this back apart, make sure that it's all sealed back up good, and I will prime that oil pump, which you guys will see when this engine's getting prepped to go back in the car. I'll prime that oil pump up so that way we're all set. So let's continue with, now that we've taken my car all the way back apart again, we can start taking it more apart, at least the engine bay stuff. I've been pulling apart the RADX7 here. You can see we got the booster out, clutch system out, transmission out, the exhaust, at least from the back section forward, my mid pipe effectively, is all out. I'm working on pulling all the wiring. I've got the hood off, battery box is out over there. Most of the wiring is disconnected, ignition coils are off, all the oil cooler lines have been removed, the oil cooler has been removed. So now, it's time to keep taking this apart. So, what you guys are going to see in the next video, this is going to conclude, I'm going to end this video here. We got the engine out, oil pump issue, figured it out. I talked with one of my buddies who builds FDs up at IR Performance, and he said they've only ever had one car not prime the oil pump, and they took it all back apart, didn't find anything wrong, put it back together, and then it primed. So I'm not sure if like it's just some weird anomaly that it didn't get enough oil in there or something, I don't know, but it's primed right now. I'll deprime it, put the front cover on, prime it on the stand again, just like I said, to make sure that's good. But I just thought that was interesting because I had never heard or seen of anybody having issues with these oil pumps. Even talking with, I know Charles had talked with the guys at Atkins Rotary who've been doing rotary cars for far longer than I have as far as a performance level, and they said they've never seen an oil pump fail. So I just thought that was interesting. But we got that stuff dialed. I have a bunch more work to do on here to get this thing apart. I'm going to pull the front clip off, so it's going to start to look not like the sexy RADX7, and it's going to start to look like, you know, a project car again. But it's all for good intentions. We're going to get this engine bay sprayed down fresh red to match the outside of the car, and we're going to get the dash out and everything in the next video and get all the wiring done so that we can come over here and don't look too closely at things laying around because I got a bunch of new stuff, but so we can get this Fuel Tech FT450 installed. So with that, guys, thank you so much for watching. We'll see you guys in the next one. Comment below any questions or concerns, and I am not stoked that we didn't get to fire this thing up because I still got to check if my transmission's good or not, but I am stoked that we found an issue that I'm happy I'm not diagnosing it like 2 weeks, probably 3 weeks before Deal's Gap. So with that, I hope to see you guys at the Gap. Love that you guys are enjoying the videos. Comment with any questions. If you want to for sure get a hold of me, super good community over on Patreon. Y'all can ask questions over there. I make videos to answer them. Anything about the cars, anything about your personal builds, go check it out. And I would much appreciate the support. So with that, thank you so much. We'll see you in the next one. Keep it rad. Man, just a whole bunch going on. Sneak peek at my wheels over there. If you pause the video or maybe caught them in the background. Buddy, come here. Come here. Come here. Unless you don't want to come over here, you're just chilling in the sun. Here, I'll ask the question. You don't even have to move. Jump if the RX7 is an unreliable car. Look, she didn't even move. She knows the RX7's a beast. Buddy, jump if the RX7 isn't going to break. Perfect. See, that's why, guys, it's like I got to work on this first gen for a bunch of these videos because the RX7 doesn't break, so it doesn't generate any of its own content. I'm not that typical, my rotary engine blew up in my RX7 guy. It just runs great. Peace, guys.